Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Digital Nomad Ventures. Thanks for tuning in. In today's video, I'm just going to be going through some of the most common questions that I get when people reach out to me and ask about, living and working remotely here in Thailand. So there's a laundry list of them, but I'm just going to be discussing the top 5. And so yeah, thanks so much for watching this video, and please subscribe to the channel. The number one question that I get from people looking to move abroad to Thailand is, what is the average cost of living? And the answer to this question varies widely. It's very open-ended. It just depends on how well you want to live over here, right? And also your chosen location. There's many different places that you can stay in Thailand. Chiang Mai, Phuket, Bangkok, Koh Samui, where I am, Koh Phangan, which is the next island over. This is a very popular spot for digital nomads with a lower cost of living than Koh Samui or Phuket, for example. So really just depends on how well you want to live. Do you want to live in a, beautiful 3-bedroom villa with a pool by the beach? Or are you perfectly happy staying at a little small house like my place here? We're spending just over $300 per month to stay here, and as you can see behind me, it's got beautiful views, beautiful surroundings. But I never really know how to answer this question, because you could be spending $2,000, $3,000 a month, or you could live below your means and be spending like $300 a month, and that's just accommodation, right? So on average, I would say my average cost of living staying here in Thailand is about $1,500 to $2,000 a month, and very small percentage of that is accommodation. Occasionally we'll go stay at a really nice resort for a night or two, me and my girlfriend. And obviously, like, another thing you have to factor in is food, right? Food expenses. So I would say the average cost of food per month is anywhere from about $300, $400, maybe $500 per month. And really just, again, it just depends on where you're eating. Are you eating cheap Thai food, like street food? If so, then that's going to be, 50, 60 baht a meal, only about $2, compared to back in the States where you got to spend, $15 or more for a meal. So it's really, it's really a matter of like using geo arbitrage to your benefit, going where you're treated best and where the average cost of living is much lower. That's one of the main reasons that I choose to live in Thailand, one of many. But yeah, that's the number one question that I get asked: what is the average cost of living? And for me personally, it's about $1,500 to $2,000 per month. Obviously, you can do very well here on an even lower budget. Just depends on how well you want to live. There's a lot of other places that you can go as well. I lived in Chiang Mai for about 3 to 4 months, and the cost of living up there is even cheaper. You can find really cheap accommodation on Airbnb. The hotels are very affordable. Food is super cheap. So yeah, and if you need any advice about this, feel free to post in the comments below, and I'll provide some feedback to you. So let's get into the second question that a lot of people ask. So the second question that a lot of people ask me is, what are the visa options in Thailand, right? So, more and more countries are coming out with competitive digital nomad or remote work visas, which for the time being here in Thailand, we don't have a solution like that. We don't have an offering that allows you to stay long-term for a year or more while working remotely. And more countries are starting to do this, and I'm pretty sure that Thailand will follow suit in due course. But for the time being, really, there's a couple different options you have. Number one, you can get your volunteer visa, which just basically means you have to volunteer at a nonprofit organization, or, I don't know all the specifics, but it allows you to stay for up to 1 year in the Kingdom of Thailand. Or you can also get your education visa. So if you're looking to come over here and learn the language, if you want to learn Thai, then you can simply enroll at, I think, either online or in person, and go to a language school and just start learning the language. So this is a really good way to stay long term and also learn a valuable skill while you're over here. You know, I've been living in Thailand almost 2.5 years now, and I still barely speak the language, just a little bit of Thai. So obviously English is a universal language, and lots of people speak English over here, especially in a touristy area like Koh Samui Island. But it is helpful to learn the language. So that's a really good option if you want to stay over here longer term and just learn the language so that you can converse with people on a daily basis. Another really good option is the Smart Visa, which I'm actually on my Smart Visa right now. It's valid for 6 months and extendable up to 2 years. So I've been approved, it was over a year ago, for the startup visa because I'm launching a virtual tour startup, like a property tech startup here in Thailand. And I just had to go to Bangkok to get that taken care of a few months ago. And the nice thing about the Smart Visa is that there's no 90-day reporting, which even the retirement visa, you have to report every 90 days. And for some reason, with the Smart Visa, you don't have to, which is really nice. That means that you don't have to keep going back to immigration every 3 months to do your reporting. I also did not have to leave the country. I was on my COVID extension for about 2 years. I had, 15 or more stamps in my passport from Thailand, and my passport got so full with Thailand stamps that I actually had to send it to the U.S. Embassy in Bangkok and get a new one delivered to me here in Samui. So now I have a new U.S. passport, and I didn't have to go back to the States to get it, which is really nice. And I also did not have to leave Thailand in order to get my Smart Visa, which is something that I was worried about. I was afraid that I'd have to do a border run, go to Singapore or Malaysia. Those are the common places that people go to. Before COVID, obviously you'd have to do the border runs to another country, then get your tourist visa for another 30 days. Luckily, I don't have to deal with any of that anymore. And with the Smart Visa, I can actually extend it up to 2 years once I show proof of income in a Thai bank account. So very useful, and I actually have a free, it's not free, it's a coaching program where you can learn how to get your Smart Visa. I'll include a link in the comments in the description below, so you can check that out and sign up if you're interested. And then the fourth option is the Elite Visa. So this is one that a lot of people don't really know about, including the Smart Visa. It's a lot more expensive, but it allows you to stay for, I believe, 30 years in the Kingdom of Thailand. So this is if you're really committed to staying here, right? And the price kind of varies. It's anywhere from about 800, I think 600,000 actually, 600,000 up to 1 million baht. But keep in mind, that's good for 30 years. So that works out, 1 million baht is about $30,000. That works out to be about $1,000 per year to stay in Thailand. So it's a really good option if you want to stay here long term. And that pretty much covers the different visa options that you can get when coming to Thailand. Obviously, I'd recommend just coming in on a tourist visa. That's good for 30 days. Usually you can get an extension for another 30 days and then either leave the country and come back, and then you can apply for your volunteer education visa. That's usually the best route to take. So now we're going to go into the third question that a lot of people ask me when planning a trip to Thailand. What is the weather like during different parts of the season? And for the most part here in Koh Samui, it's sunny and beautiful year-round. Of course, right now, as you can see behind me, it's sort of rainy. It's part of the reason for that is because we live near the mountain here in Lamai. So you can see the cloud cover there. It tends to rain a little bit more frequently on this side of the island compared to like Bangkok or Mae Nam. But being on an island, we have our own weather system. So the weather varies pretty wildly from day to day, but most of the time it's usually sunny and beautiful. That being said, like rainy season is usually around October to January here in Samui. So if you're looking to make a trip to Koh Samui in particular, then I would recommend coming, after January and before August. And, you know, the weather really varies wildly across the country. So you've also got Phuket, which is on the Andaman Sea, and they tend to have more monsoon seasons. So since Koh Samui is protected by the bay, we really don't get too many monsoons, whereas Phuket usually gets some pretty bad ones. And then up in Chiang Mai in the north, they have what's called burning season, because a lot of the farmers, they burn their crops, and Chiang Mai is in a valley, so it kind of traps all of the smoke in there, and that's usually between, I think it starts from January to April. I could be wrong though. Correct me in the comments if you know better than I do. But so yeah, it's really unhealthy in Chiang Mai. It actually becomes one of the most polluted places in the world during these few months, so I would not recommend going there during burning season. And then Bangkok is usually very polluted pretty much year round. So that's one of the reasons that I choose to not live in the city. One of many, actually, just because it's so polluted. But generally, the weather is very beautiful here year round. It's sunny, it's warm, we don't have any winter. It never snows in Thailand, as obviously. And here in Samui, we have a lot of palm trees, as you can see behind me. It's absolutely beautiful here. Another question that I sometimes get, although not as frequently as the other ones, is it possible for a foreigner to buy and own property in Thailand? And obviously, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney. I don't have a lot of experience with this yet because I haven't had to cross this bridge yet. But some of my retired friends in Samui, they've bought houses, they've bought land here, and so I've learned a lot from them about the process of owning land in the Kingdom of Thailand. So normally, as a foreigner, you're restricted. You're not allowed to buy property in Thailand. It's only for if you're married and then your spouse can buy the land and then it's under her name. Or there's a caveat, if you have a company registered in Thailand. So it has to be a Thai limited company. You also need to hire typically 2 to 3 Thai people that they're essentially part of the company, director, and they have to own 51% of that company, right? So you have minority share, they have majority share, and that's one thing that causes a lot of people concern, but it's nothing really to be concerned about, because if something does happen, then you have options, right? And that's something that you want to talk to with a lawyer about. But essentially, if you want to buy a house, that's easy, You can easily buy a house. It will typically have to be under the company name, unless you can just buy it from someone else, and they already have their own company set up, and then you can just come in and be the sole proprietor, or whatever you want to say. So, yeah, but in order to buy land, you can buy the land, but again, it has to be under your own company, and I believe that you can't actually own the land. I'm not entirely sure about this, but typically you can only own the property that is built on top of the land. So correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not entirely sure how that works. Again, you'll have to contact a lawyer or accountant or attorney over here when you get to Thailand to figure out that stuff. I was actually just looking at a plot of land right across from our place over here earlier today, because my friend in Samui, he's helping with property management, and he's looking for a plot of land to buy in Samui. It's just right over here behind my place. So we went over there, and there was a guy just trimming some banana trees. Turns out he was the owner of the land. He owned the entire plot of land. So we spoke with him for a little while, and we kind of just asked how much would it be to just rent the land or just own a section of it, right? So it's there is some gray area here. I'm not entirely sure how it works, because again, I haven't come across the point where I want to buy land or buy a house. I just pretty much rent all the time. So that's exactly what I'm doing at this place here. And it works out fine. You don't really need to buy anything unless you want to rent it on Airbnb. There's certain restrictions there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And now I'm going to go into the fifth and final question that I get from a lot of people when they're planning to make a move to Thailand. The fifth and final question that I've gotten a lot from people when they're planning to come to Thailand is, what are the travel restrictions? Of course, right? During COVID, there were so many travel restrictions. Of course, almost all of those are gone now. You can freely enter the country and move about as you please. You don't have to do any 14, 7-day, 3-day quarantine at a hotel, which is something that they were doing as kind of a money grab for a while. And there's no PCR test on arrival. You don't have to screw around with any of that. I believe you do still need to show proof of vaccination. So, I mean, most countries still require this, so it's not really a big deal. But to be perfectly honest, I haven't left Thailand for 2.5 years. I flew into Phuket in January of 2020 after traveling around Bali for a few months. And since then, I have not left the country. I haven't been back to the US. I haven't traveled around Southeast Asia, which was my original plan. I wanted to go to Vietnam, Philippines, maybe Malaysia. But I just haven't really been all that motivated because I'm already on a beautiful paradise island called Koh Samui, and I've just chosen to make this my home base for the time being. Right now, I'm kind of just waiting on more travel funds. I'm starting a coaching business, just waiting to get more clients for that. And I have my own remote consulting business as well. So I really just plan to stay here in Koh Samui for at least another 6 months. I'm going to be making a business trip to Phuket next month for this virtual tour startup and just kind of networking more over there. But yeah, I mean, let's go back to the original question, and that is, are there any travel restrictions? And the short answer is no. The world has opened up again and travel is back. And, if you're looking to make a trip to Thailand, then all you have to do is get your airfare. I would recommend booking a round trip ticket because a lot of airline companies require that. They want to see that you have a return trip just in case something happens. But other than that, I mean, it's fully open. There's no quarantine. There's no testing on arrival. You may need to show proof of vaccination. I've never been asked for it, not a single time. Well, I did have to use it a couple times, and there's a mobile app that I installed on my phone that showed that I had my 2 shots, and I needed to show that occasionally when traveling between the island and the mainland. But other than that, like even going to the airport, I've almost never been asked to show proof of vaccination because I've just stayed in Thailand the entire time, so it's not really a big deal. So yeah, hopefully the answers to these questions have been helpful to you, and it makes it easier to plan your trip to Thailand. I highly recommend coming here. It's one of the most beautiful countries in the world, and the people are super friendly. The food is delicious. Cost of living is very cheap, which is another big reason that I choose to stay here. I've also been with my girlfriend for almost 2 years now, and she's a big part of the reason I stay here as well. And I mean, as long as you have a stable income or you have a remote job or a few clients, then you really don't need to worry about running out of money when you're over here because it's very affordable, and obviously you can be balling out and get a huge villa up on the mountain or by the beach with a pool and 3 bedrooms. And you can even buy a house over here as well because, like, compared to back in the States where you're spending a minimum of $1 million on a house, over here $1 million house is a mansion, right? It's just incredible, a completely different world over here, right? So if you're interested in any more information about any of this stuff, feel free to post a comment down below or send me an email. I'll include it in the description. Happy to answer any questions you may have. And yeah, thanks so much for watching this episode. Please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for updates from Thailand. Peace.